3 days ago, I wired $50 million to a Swiss bank account just because I didn't trust the American economy.
Yesterday, I bought a penthouse in Manhattan that overlooks the building where I used to scrub toilets.
But right now, I'm sitting in a custom-made $3 million Bugatti Chiron.
Watching a man who told me I was worthless trash knock on my window.
Begging for a single dollar.
He doesn't know it's me behind this tinted glass.
He doesn't know that the girl he kicked out into the rain 6 months ago is now worth $500 million. If you've ever been told you weren't good enough, if you've ever wanted to prove everyone wrong and watch karma strike like a lightning bolt, hit that subscribe button right now. Because revenge isn't just a dish served cold. Sometimes it's served on a platinum platter. Let's rewind. 6 months.
Before the Bugatti, before the Versace gowns.
Before the private security team that follows me to the grocery store.
I meant my net worth was exactly $42.
I was 20 years old, drowning in student loans, and working double shifts at a greasy diner in New Jersey called Pete's Pit. Oh, it smelled like old fry oil and despair. I had one good thing in my life, or so I thought. Caleb was my high school sweetheart. He was handsome, ambitious, and obsessed with hustle culture. He was an intern at a hedge fund in the city, wearing cheap suits that he pretended were Armani, constantly talking about crypto and stocks like he was the Wolf of Wall Street.
I supported us.
I paid the rent on our shoebox apartment while he built his net worth. I paid for his dry cleaning.
Bedding herself in things. I skipped meals so he could buy protein powder.
But stop. I thought we were a team. I thought we were building an empire together, brick by brick. I was an idiot.
It happened on a Tuesday.
It was raining because of course it was raining. The universe loves a cliche. I came home early from my shift because I had a fever of 102.
I just wanted to crawl into bed and sleep for a week.
I unlocked the door to our apartment. Caleb was there, but he wasn't alone. Sitting on my thrift store couch, drinking my cheap wine, was a girl. Not just any girl. Sarah Vanderhoven. She was the daughter of one of the partners at Caleb's firm. She was blonde, she wore real pearls, and she looked like she smelled like vanilla and inheritance money. They weren't doing anything physical. Say that, they were just looking at a laptop. But when I walked in, dripping wet, shivering, looking like a drowned rat in my waitress uniform, Caleb didn't jump up. He didn't ask if I was okay. He looked annoyed.
Elena, he said, closing the laptop. You're home early.
At a time, they told him I was sick and asked who she was. Sarah stood up, smoothing down a skirt that probably cost more than my entire existence. She said she should go and told Caleb to call her when the situation was resolved. She walked past me without even making eye contact. Psycho's a piece of furniture. When the door clicked shut, the silence in the room was deafening. I asked him what situation he was talking about. Caleb sighed. He ran a hand through his perfectly gelled hair. He walked over to the counter and poured himself a glass of water, not offering me any. He told me he was going to do this on the weekend, but now was as good a time as any. He said we were done. I blinked. The fever made the room spin. He told me he was breaking up with me. His eyes were cold, dead. He told me I was a great girl, but then he told me to look at myself. He gestured to my wet uniform, my worn-out shoes. He said he was going places. He said he was going to be a millionaire by 25, and needed a partner who fit that lifestyle. Someone with connections. Someone with class. I screamed that I was working 2 jobs to support him.
Time that I paid for the suit he was wearing.
He said he appreciated the investment, but it was time to cut his losses.
He called me dead weight.
He said I was holding him back. He said Sarah understood the world he belonged in. In a rage, I spat out that he belonged in a dumpster.
Need 100 to be.
He told me to leave. He said he promised Sarah he'd clean up the apartment before she came over that night. I reminded him it was my apartment and my name was on the lease. But Caleb smirked and pulled a piece of paper from his pocket.
He told me he spoke to the landlord yesterday, told him I was moving out.
And transferred the lease to his name. He said the landlord liked him and thought he had potential, unlike me. He walked to the door and opened it. The rain was pouring down harder now. He told me to get out and take my stuff later.
Just told me to go.
I stood there, shaking, heartbroken, furious. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream.
But I was sick. I was tired.
And I realized, looking at his smug face, that he wasn't worth the energy. I turned around and walked out. Pick a coat? I didn't take my bag. I just walked out into the cold, dark rain. I spent that night sleeping in my car, a rusted 2008 Honda Civic that sounded like a lawnmower. I parked it behind the diner because I knew the owner wouldn't tow me. I cried until I threw up. I cried until there were no tears left. The next morning, I woke up with a stiff neck and a notification on my phone. Bank balance, $12.45.
Payday was 3 days away.
I went into the gas station to use the bathroom and brush my teeth with my finger.
I felt like a ghost.
People walked past me, looking through me.
I was the girl with the messy hair and the sad eyes. The poor girl. I walked up to the counter to buy a bottle of water. The cashier, an old man named Jerry, who always called me Kiddo. He looked at me with pity and asked if I had a rough night.
I know when I had a rough life.
I put the water on the counter. My eyes wandered to the screen above his head.
Powerball jackpot, $500 million.
Cash option, $280 million, $500 million. It was a number so big, it didn't feel real. It felt like a phone number. Caleb wanted to be a millionaire. He wanted class. $500 million could buy a lot of class. It could buy Caleb's entire soul and still have enough left over for a latte. I told Jerry to give me a ticket. Jerry raised an eyebrow. He asked if I was sure because that was $2 and I had rent to pay. I told him I didn't have an apartment anymore. I dug 2 crumpled dollar bills out of my jeans pocket. I told him to just give me the ticket, an easy pick,
And let the machine decide my fate.
Clearly, I was bad at making decisions.
He printed the ticket. I didn't look at the numbers.
I shoved it into my back pocket, grabbed my water, and went to work. 3 days passed. Like flowering, I was living in my car, showering at the gym, working double shifts. I had blocked Caleb's number, but I saw his Instagram stories from my burner account. He was at fancy dinners with Sarah. Oysters, champagne, hashtag power couple, hashtag upgrade. It burned. It burned like acid in my veins. Tuesday night. The drawing. I was sitting in my car, eating instant noodles made with hot water from the coffee machine.
I was listening to the radio.
The announcer said it was the moment we had all been waiting for. The Powerball numbers for the $500 million jackpot. Verse number 14. I looked at my ticket. 14. Okay, one number, that's $4 lunch money. Second number, 22. My heart did a little skip. 22. Okay. A third number 38. I sat up straighter. The noodles slipped off my fork. 38.
And fourth number, DC.
Fourth number 05. My hands started to shake. Whoa, 5. Form. 41. I stopped breathing. The world went silent. The sound of the rain on the roof disappeared. 41. And the Powerball lucky number 07. I looked at the ticket. 14, 22, 38, 05, 41, Powerball 07. I stared at the piece of paper. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes.
I turned the light off and on again.
The numbers didn't change. I checked the date. It was today's date. I checked the website on my cracked iPhone screen. Winning tickets. 1. Location, New Jersey. 1 ticket. 1 winner.
Me.
I didn't scream. I didn't cry. The noodle cup fell from my lap, spilling hot broth onto my jeans.
Whoa.
$500 million.
After taxes, taking the lump sum, maybe $250 million.
$250 million.
I looked at my Honda Civic. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The tired girl with the dark circles who Caleb called trash. A slow, terrifying smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile, it was a shark smile. I whispered Caleb's name to the empty car. I asked if he wanted a girl with money. I laughed. A manic, hysterical laugh that echoed in the tiny car. I told him I was going to buy his whole world. Can you imagine looking at that ticket? My life changed in a single second. But here's the thing about money. It doesn't just solve problems.
It creates weapon.
And I was about to go to war, if you want to see how I spend my first million, to destroy my ex's ego. Hit that like button. Let's get to 50,000 likes for the new Bugatti. I didn't run to the lottery office immediately. That's what amateurs do. That's how you end up dead or broke in 5 years. I sat in my Honda Civic for 3 hours staring at the rain, letting the reality sink in. I was holding a piece of paper worth more than the GDP of a small island nation, and I was terrified. Not of the money, but of losing it. I realized right then that I didn't just need to cash a ticket. I needed to disappear. I drove to the public library. I used a computer in the back corner to research one thing: the best asset protection lawyers in New York City. I found a name: Silas Stone. He was the kind of lawyer who represented oil tycoons and silence. He cost $2,000 an hour. I had $12. I didn't care. I walked into his office in Manhattan the next morning. The receptionist looked at my stained jeans and my messy hair like I was a cockroach that had crawled in from the subway. She told me Mr. Stone didn't take walk-ins and certainly didn't take charity cases. I didn't argue. I just took a piece of notebook paper, wrote down a single sentence, and folded it. I told her to give it to him. She sighed, rolling her eyes, and walked into the back office. 30 seconds later, the double doors burst open. Silas Stone, a man in a sharp gray suit with eyes like a hawk, walked out. He looked at me, then at the paper in his hand. The note said, "I have the winning Powerball ticket and I need a ghost." 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a leather chair that cost more than my car. I showed him the ticket. He didn't smile. He just nodded and asked me what I wanted. I told him I wanted a trust. I wanted to claim the money anonymously. No press conference, no giant check with my face on the news. I wanted the world to know the money was gone, but I didn't want them to know who had it. He told me it would take 48 hours to set up the shell companies. He asked me if I needed an advance. I looked at my worn-out sneakers and told him, yes. He opened a drawer and handed me a stack of cash. $5,000. He told me to go get a hotel and a shower and that we would sign the papers on Friday. Walking out of that building with $5,000 in my pocket felt more dangerous than the lottery ticket. I checked into the Mandarin Oriental. I took a shower that lasted an hour. I scrubbed the smell of fry oil off my skin until I was raw. I stood in front of the mirror in the plush bathrobe looking at the girl in the reflection. She looked scared. I told her to stop it. Fear was for poor people. I wasn't poor anymore. If you are loving this journey from rags to riches, smash that subscribe button. We are about to spend some serious cash, and you don't want to miss the makeover that turns me into Caleb's worst nightmare. Friday came, the wire transfer hit. $284 million. Seeing that number on a banking app screen changes your chemical makeup. It rewires your brain. I didn't feel happy. I felt powerful. Dangerous. I called Mr. Stone. I told him I needed a new identity, not a fake one, but a polished one. I hired a stylist, a makeup artist, and an etiquette coach. For the next 2 weeks, I didn't leave the hotel suite. I trained. I learned how to walk in Louboutins. I learned how to pronounce wine names. I learned how to look at people with bored indifference. My stylist, a French woman named Chloe, threw away every single piece of clothing I owned, even my underwear. She replaced them with silk, cashmere, and leather. She cut my hair, dyeing it a rich, dark chocolate brown and giving me a sharp, angular bob. When she was done, I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize myself. Elena, the waitress, was dead. In her place stood Elena, the heiress. I looked expensive. I looked intimidating. I looked like I belonged in the world Caleb was so desperate to join. Speaking of Caleb, I hadn't forgotten him. While I was reinventing myself, I was watching him. I hired a private investigator to track his every move. I knew where he ate lunch. I knew which gym he went to. And most importantly, I knew about his job. He was a junior analyst at Sterling & Holt, finest to be here investment firm. He was trying to bring in high net worth clients to impress his boss and get a promotion. He was desperate for a big catch. That was my way in. I told Mr. Stone to set up a meeting with the senior partners at Sterling & Holt. I told him I was representing a new private family trust looking to invest $50 million. In the finance world, $50 million is like blood in the water. The sharks come running. The meeting was set for Monday morning. I specifically requested that they have their best junior analyst present to take notes. I knew Caleb would be there. He was the teacher's pet. He wouldn't miss it.
Monday morning, the day of the execution, I put on a white Tom Ford power suit. I wore sunglasses that cost more than Caleb's rent.
I stepped into my new town car. The driver held the door open for me. My heart was beating fast. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. I was about to walk into the lion's den. We pulled up to the skyscraper. I walked through the lobby, my heels clicking on the marble floor like gunfire. The receptionist rushed to greet me. She didn't look at me like a cockroach this time. She looked at me like I was royalty. She guided me to the boardroom on the top floor. I walked in. The room was full of men in suits. The senior partner, Mr. Sterling, stood up to shake my hand. He was smiling that fake, hungry smile. I shook his hand, keeping my sunglasses on for a moment before taking them off. And then I saw him. Caleb. He was standing in the corner, holding a notepad, looking nervous and eager. He was wearing that same cheap suit I had paid for. He looked up when I entered. For a second, his eyes locked with mine. He frowned. He squinted. He saw a woman who looked vaguely familiar, but this woman was wearing a $10,000 suit and carrying a Birkin bag. This woman radiated power. He didn't recognize me. He couldn't. His brain refused to accept that the girl he dumped in the rain could be the $50 million client he was praying for. He looked away, dismissing the thought. Ooh, perfect. Mr. Sterling offered me a seat at the head of the table. He started his pitch, talking about returns and market volatility. I listened, bored, tapping my manicured fingernail on the mahogany table. When he finished, silence filled the room. I looked around the table, letting my gaze linger on each man before landing on Caleb. I spoke for the first time. My voice was smooth, cold, and entirely different from the girl who used to shout orders in a diner. I told Mr. Sterling that his pitch was adequate, but I liked to work with people who were hungry. I pointed a finger directly at Caleb. I asked who he was. Caleb froze. He turned red. He stammered, introducing himself as Caleb, a junior analyst. Mr. Sterling jumped in, saying Caleb was one of their brightest young minds. I smiled. A shark's smile. I told Mr. Sterling that I liked Caleb's energy. I told him that if I was going to invest $50 million with his firm, I wanted Caleb to be my personal point of contact. I wanted him to handle my daily requests. I wanted him to be at my beck and call 24/7. Caleb's eyes widened. He looked like he had just won the lottery. He thought this was his big break. He thought he had charmed a wealthy heiress. He had no idea he had just signed a deal with the devil. Mr. Sterling was ecstatic. He agreed immediately. I stood up to leave. I walked over to Caleb. He extended his hand, sweating. I didn't shake it. I just looked him up and down, letting a tiny smirk play on my lips. I leaned in close, smelling the cheap cologne I used to buy him for Christmas. I whispered that I expected great things from him, and that he shouldn't disappoint me. He nodded enthusiastically, looking like a puppy. I walked out of the room, leaving a trail of expensive perfume in my wake. As the elevator doors closed, I finally let myself laugh. The trap was set. Caleb thought he was on his way to the top, but he didn't know that I was the one holding the ladder. And I was about to shake it until he fell. The game had officially begun, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. The first week was a masterclass in psychological warfare. I didn't yell, I didn't scream, I just demanded. I became the nightmare client every analyst dreads, but the one they can't afford to lose. My phone became his alarm clock. I called him at 3 a.m, demanding updates on the Asian markets. I called him at lunch, demanding he secure a reservation at impossible restaurants like Rao's or Masa, just to cancel them 5 minutes before the reservation time because I wasn't in the mood for sushi. I watched him deteriorate. The bags under his eyes grew darker. His perfectly gelled hair started to look messy. He was running on caffeine and desperation. Every time I saw him, he looked more exhausted. And it fed my soul. He was working 18-hour days to please me, thinking that if he just worked hard enough, he would get that $50 million commission. He was chasing a carrot that was attached to a stick, and I was holding the stick over a cliff. On Wednesday, I decided to test his limits. I called him at 10 a.m. and told him I had a personal emergency. He sounded panicked, asking if I was okay, probably worrying about his precious commission. I told him I needed a specific handbag, an Hermes Himalayan Birkin. For those who don't know, you can't just walk into a store and buy one. They are rare, costing upwards of $200,000. And you need a purchase history that rivals a small country's debt just to be offered one. I told Caleb I needed it by 5 o'clock that evening for a gala. He stammered. He tried to explain that it was impossible. I cut him off. I told him that my previous financial advisor could make the impossible happen. And maybe I had overestimated his potential. The line went silent. I could hear him calculating his future. Then he said he would handle it. I hung up and laughed. I knew he would have to call in every favor, max out his own credit cards for deposits, and probably beg half of New York City to find a reseller. At 4:55, he showed up at my hotel suite. He was sweating. He looked like he had run a marathon in his cheap suit. In his hand, he held the orange box. He had done it. He had actually found the bag. He handed it to me with trembling hands, a triumphant smile on his face. He expected praise. He expected me to be impressed. I opened the box, looked at the $250,000 bag, and sighed. I told him the hardware was palladium, and I specifically wanted gold. I closed the box and handed it back to him. I told him to return it. The look on his face was priceless. It was a mixture of shock, rage, and absolute defeat. He tried to argue. He tried to tell me how hard it was to find. I just looked at him with cold, dead eyes and asked him if he wanted to argue with the client or fix the mistake. He swallowed his pride, took the box, and walked out. I didn't go to any gala. I ordered room service, ate a $300 lobster mac and cheese in my bathrobe, and watched The Real Housewives. Watching him suffer was better than any reality TV. If you are enjoying watching this gold digger get absolutely destroyed, hit that like button. Let's aim for 100,000 likes if you think Caleb deserves everything that is coming to him. But the real blow came on Friday. I knew from my private investigator that Friday was his 2-year anniversary with Sarah. He had planned a romantic dinner at Le Bernardin. He had bought a necklace. Not a nice one. Probably something plated, but still, he was planning to propose. I knew this because he had been bragging about it to the receptionist at his firm, one of my paid informants, a proposal. He was going to lock down the golden goose. I couldn't let that happen. At 6 o'clock on Friday evening, just as he was probably putting on his best tie, I called him. I told him I needed an emergency portfolio review. In person. Immediately, he hesitated. He told me he had plans. Important plans. I let the silence hang on the phone for 10 seconds. Then I told him that I was looking at transferring my assets to Goldman Sachs because they offered 24-hour service. He panicked. He begged me to wait until morning. I told him I was flying to Dubai in the morning and it was tonight or never. He caved. Of course he caved. Greed always wins over love with men like Caleb. He told me he would be there in 20 minutes. He showed up at my hotel suite looking miserable. His phone was buzzing incessantly in his pocket. Sarah. I ignored it. I made him sit at the dining table and go over spreadsheets that I already knew by heart. I asked him meaningless questions. I made him recalculate projections that were already correct. I kept him there for 4 hours. Every time his phone buzzed, I smiled internally. Finally, around 10 o'clock, he asked if he could use the restroom. I nodded. As soon as he left the room, his phone lit up on the table. A text from Sarah. Don't bother coming home. I hope she's worth it. I didn't touch the phone. I just stared at the message. I hope she's worth it. Oh, Sarah, you have no idea. She thought he was cheating. She thought he was with another woman. And in a way, he was. He was with his mistress. Money. And she was a cruel mistress. Caleb came back looking pale. He checked his phone and I saw the color drain from his face. He looked like he was going to throw up. I closed the folder. I told him that was enough for tonight. I told him he did good work. I handed him a glass of Scotch Macallan 25 and told him to drink up. He downed it in one gulp. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for some sort of validation, some sign that destroying his relationship was worth it. I looked him in the eye and told him that I was very impressed with his dedication. I told him that next week I wanted to discuss a bigger project, a merger. I told him I was planning to acquire a small tech company, and I wanted him to lead the due diligence. His eyes lit up. This was it, the career-making deal. The pain of the breakup faded instantly, replaced by the dollar signs in his eyes. He thanked me profusely and left. He walked out into the night, single, exhausted, but hopeful. He didn't know that the tech company I wanted to acquire didn't exist. He didn't know that Sarah had likely thrown his clothes out on the street. And he didn't know that I was just getting started. Sarah was ampling you point. The next phase was isolation. I needed to separate him from his support system. Sarah was gone, but he still had his friends, his network. I decided to throw a party, a welcome party, for myself to introduce myself to the New York elite. I rented out the rooftop of the Standard Hotel, open bar, caviar station, celebrity DJ. I invited everyone who was anyone in the city. And of course, I invited Caleb. But I gave him a special task. I told him that since he was my right-hand man, I needed him to manage the guest list. I turned him into a glorified bouncer. I made him stand at the door with a clipboard while the people he idolized walked past him. He had to check coats. He had to tell hedge fund managers that they weren't on the VIP list. He had to fetch drinks for people he used to go to college with, people who were now more successful than him. I watched from the VIP section, sipping champagne with a senator. I saw Caleb down below, sweating in the humidity, being yelled at by a D-list celebrity who couldn't find her purse. It was humiliating, it was degrading, and he took it. He took every ounce of it because he thought he was part of the inner circle. He didn't realize he was the help. Midway through the party, I saw him talking to a group of guys from his old fraternity. They were laughing. I could tell by his body language that he was trying to impress them, probably telling them that he was managing the event, that he was the key to my fortune. I decided to intervene. I walked over, the crowd parting for me like the Red Sea. Caleb straightened up when he saw me. He smiled.
Elena, Miss Vance,
He said, puffing out his chest.
these are some old friends of mine. They work at J.P. Morgan and
I didn't let him finish. I held out my empty champagne flute. I looked at him with a confused expression. Caleb, I said, loud enough for the whole group to hear. Why are you talking? My glass is empty, and the senator needs a napkin. Run along. The silence was brutal. His friends looked at him. He looked at me. His face turned a deep shade of crimson. The facade of the power player shattered instantly. He was just a waiter in a suit. He stammered, took the glass, and walked away with his head down. His friends snickered. I turned to them, flashed a dazzling smile, and asked if they wanted to buy some stock. They forgot about Caleb in a second. That night, as the party wound down, I found him sitting on a bench near the exit. He looked broken. He had lost his girlfriend. He had lost his dignity. He was tired. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered the rain. I remembered the look in his eyes when he called me trash. I remembered the feeling of sleeping in my car. I walked over to him. I sat down next to him. Rough night, I asked, echoing the words Jerry the cashier had said to me. He looked up. I'm doing everything you ask, he whispered. I'm trying so hard, but I feel like I'm drowning. Pressure makes diamonds, Caleb, I said softly. You want to be rich, don't you? You want to be powerful. Yes, he said. More than anything. Then stop complaining, I said, standing up, because next week we're going to make history. I'm liquidating my portfolio, all of it, and I'm putting it into a single trade, and I want you to execute it. He stood up, the shock replacing the fatigue. All of it? That's $200 million. One trade? That's insane. That's market manipulation. It's aggressive. I corrected. And it's going to make you a legend. Are you in? Or should I call Goldman? He didn't hesitate. I'm in. Good, I said. Meet me at the office Monday morning. Come alone. And Caleb, yes, wear a better suit. You look cheap. I walked away, leaving him standing on the rooftop. He thought he was about to make the trade of a lifetime. He thought he was about to become the king of Wall Street. He had no idea that I was leading him into a trap so deep he would never climb out. I wasn't going to make him a legend. I was going to make him a cautionary tale. I got into my town car. The driver looked in the rearview mirror. Where to, Miss Vance? Take me to New Jersey, I said. Pete's Pit. The diner, ma'am. Yes, I said, looking out at the city lights. I have a craving for greasy fries, and I need to visit an old friend. I needed to see Jerry. I needed to remind myself of who I was before the final act. Because Monday wasn't just about money. Monday was about destruction. And I needed to be ready to pull the trigger. Subscribe now if you want to see the grand finale. The trap is set, the bait is taken. And on Monday morning, Caleb is going to lose a lot more than just his job. He's going to lose his freedom. The drive to New Jersey felt like time travel. As the Manhattan skyline faded in the rearview mirror, replaced by refineries and strip malls, I felt the ghost of the old Elena sitting in the passenger seat. I pulled up to Pete's Pit. It looked exactly the same. The neon sign buzzed with a dying flicker. The windows were greasy. My Bugatti, which I had swapped the town car for, looked like a spaceship, landed in the parking lot. I walked in. The bell chimed. Jerry was behind the counter wiping down the laminate with a rag that was older than me. He looked up, ready to tell a rich tourist they were lost. And he squinted. He dropped the rag. Kiddo, he whispered. I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. It's me, Jerry. He came around the counter and hugged me. He smelled like coffee and cigarettes, the best smell in the world. He asked if I was in trouble. He asked if I had robbed a bank. I laughed and told him, better. I told him I won. I sat on a stool and told him everything. The ticket, the millions, the plan. He listened, his mouth hanging open. When I finished, I reached into my designer bag and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside was the deed to the building. I had bought the diner that morning and a check. $2 million. I slid it across the counter. I told him to retire. I told him to go to Florida and fish until he got bored.
He started to cry. He tried to push it back.
I grabbed his hand. I told him he was the only person who treated me like a human being when I had nothing. I told him that was worth more than $2 million. He took the check. We drank bad coffee and ate cherry pie. For an hour, I wasn't a shark. I was just Elena. But then, I checked my Rolex. It was time. I kissed Jerry on the cheek, walked out to my car, and drove back to the city. The war wasn't over yet. Monday morning. The air in the office was electric. Caleb was waiting for me in the conference room. He was wearing a new suit. It was expensive. Probably put on a credit card he couldn't afford. He looked nervous, but excited. He thought he was about to become a millionaire. He didn't know he was about to become a felon. I walked in, flanked by two men in dark suits. Caleb stood up, beaming. He asked if we were ready. I sat down at the head of the table. I placed a single folder in front of him. I told him to open it. He did. Inside was a trade order, a massive short position on a pharmaceutical company called Vaintech. I told him I had insider information that the FDA was going to reject their new drug today at noon. I told him if we shorted the stock now, we would make $50 million by lunch. His hands shook. He knew this was illegal. Insider trading, a federal crime. He looked at me. I looked at him, daring him to say no. I asked him if he wanted to be a legend or if he wanted to go back to checking coats. Greed won. It always does. He logged into his terminal. He typed in the order. He looked at me one last time. I nodded. He hit enter. Order went through. He slumped back in his chair, exhaling. He said it was done. He smiled, a sweaty, desperate smile. He said we were going to be rich. I checked my watch. 11:59. I stood up. I walked over to the window and looked out at the city. I asked him if he ever wondered what happened to Elena. He froze. He asked why I was asking about his ex. He said she was trash. He said she was probably flipping burgers somewhere. I turned around slowly. I took off my sunglasses. I reached up and pulled off the dark wig, letting my natural, lighter hair fall around my shoulders. I took a wet wipe from my pocket and scrubbed the heavy contour off my face. It took him a solid 10 seconds. He squinted. He tilted his head, and then the blood drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He whispered, "My name? Elena?" "Hello, Caleb," I said. He stood up, knocking his chair over. He looked from me to the terminal. He started to hyperventilate. He asked what was going on. He asked how this was possible. I told him it was amazing what $500 million could do. I told him I bought the winning Powerball ticket the night he kicked me out. He stared at me. The realization hit him like a truck. The money, the bag, the dinner, the party. It was all me. He started to laugh, a crazy, laugh. He walked toward me. He said this was great. He said we were rich. He said he knew I still loved him. He said we could be a power couple for real now. He reached out to hug me. The two men in dark suits stepped forward, blocking him. One of them shoved him back into his chair. Caleb looked confused. He asked what was happening. I pointed to the screen. I told him to look at the trade he just executed. I told him that Vaintech wasn't a pharmaceutical company. It was a shell company I created. I owned 100% of the shares, and he just bet the firm's money against it. I picked up my phone. I made a call. I told my broker to release the press release. Instantly, the news hit the wire. Vaintech acquired by private equity for $300 million. On Caleb's screen, the stock price didn't crash. It skyrocketed. It went vertical. He had shorted it, which meant he owed the money. The loss wasn't $50 million. Because of the leverage he used, the loss was catastrophic. The firm's capital was vaporizing in real time. Caleb screamed. He frantically tried to cancel the trade. It was too late. I leaned over the table. I told him that I had recorded our conversation. The part where I told him it was insider trading? I lied. It wasn't, but he thought it was. He showed intent to commit a felony, and now he had just bankrupted his firm. The doors burst open. Security guards, followed by Mr. Sterling, rushed in. Mr. Sterling was screaming. He looked at the screen. He looked at Caleb. he realized his firm was insolvent. He grabbed Caleb by the lapels of his expensive new suit and threw him against the wall. He screamed that Caleb was fired. He screamed that he was calling the FBI. Caleb looked at me, tears streaming down his face. He begged me to help him. He said he did it for me. I looked at him with zero emotion. I told him he didn't do it for me. He did it for the lifestyle. And now he was going to pay for it. I picked up my Birkin bag. I walked to the door. As security dragged him out, kicking and screaming, I stopped. I looked back. I told him that he was right about one thing. I didn't fit into his world. I bought it. If you are satisfied seeing this cheater get destroyed, hit that subscribe button. But wait, we aren't done. Fast forward 6 months. The investigation was brutal. Caleb didn't go to prison, barely. He took a plea deal for negligence, but he was blacklisted. No finance firm would touch him. He was sued by Sterling and Holt for millions. He declared bankruptcy. He lost his apartment. He lost his friends. He lost everything. Which brings us to today. I'm sitting in my Bugatti on 5th Avenue. It's raining again. The universe loves a callback. I see him. He's standing on the corner, holding a cardboard sign. He looks older, thinner. He's wearing that same suit, but now it's torn and dirty. He's shivering. He walks down the line of cars, knocking on windows. Most people ignore him. He gets to my car, he knocks, he looks at the tinted glass, he begs for $1. Just $1. I press the button. The window rolls down with a soft electric hum. He looks inside. He sees the leather interior. He sees the diamonds on my wrist. And then he sees my face. His eyes go wide. He drops his cup. Coins scatter on the wet pavement. He whispers my name. Elena. I don't smile. I don't gloat. I just reach into the center console. I pull out a single dollar bill. But not just any bill. It's the dollar he threw at me when he kicked me out, telling me to buy a clue. I kept it. I framed it. And today, I took it out of the frame. I hold it out. The wind whips it in my hand. I tell him that I invested in myself, and the returns were excellent. I let the dollar go. It flutters down into the puddle at his feet. He falls to his knees, reaching for it, sobbing in the rain. I roll up the window. I put the car in gear. The engine of the Bugatti roars like a beast. I don't look back. I merge into traffic, heading toward my new life. The rearview mirror is clear. The past is behind me. And the road ahead, it's paved with gold. Thank you for watching. If you want more stories about karma, revenge, and justice, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. And remember, never underestimate the person you push into the rain. They might just buy the storm.